Hi, welcome back to Beyond Authentic Witchcraft's Meandering Magical Podcast. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Neil.
And today we're going to be talking about witchcraft shops, witchy shops, alternative shops, all of that sort of woo-woo shops. But before we do, we're going to start talking, as we always do, about this month's witchcraft news. Okay, so there are actually two stories to talk about that we've picked for today. I found this news report actually on the day that we're filming this podcast earlier on today. It's from STV News, and it's talking about a new plaque that is aiming awareness of the last of the women convicted of witchcraft. So basically, in this small town, now this isn't far from you, is it, Neil? I say that. I don't know geography. You're not actually in Scotland, so it could be miles away, but it probably is. But this is talking about the Angus town of Forfar. It says here, it's hoped a new plaque in Forfar will provide a wider recognition for the women who were executed hundreds of years ago on suspicion of witchcraft. Designed by local artists, the work will soon be displayed at the townhouse after a short stay at Methven Museum. More than 50 women were falsely accused in the Angus town in the 1600s, and many of them were killed. Many bad things happened during that period of history, but this is one clear and simple case, legally, of a miscarriage of justice, said historian Judith Langland Scott. We're working with Witches of Scotland to have that recognised and have these people pardoned officially. The plaque has been created by Kaylee Skye Esplin and Andrew Rose, the same artists behind a mural in the town. With the mural, we went for a kind of whole picture of what happened with the Forfar witches, says Kaylee. For the plaque, we decided to zone and be a bit more positive, to celebrate the life the witches had and how it was just people rather than all the brutality and victimization that was put on them. There's a picture there of the mural. So what do you think about this, Neil? Because we've seen this over the last sort of several years, really, where as witchcraft is becoming more mainstream and more widely accepted today, there's a lot of looking back into the past and pardoning a lot of the people that were killed during those witch trials. Do you think this is a good thing?
I mean, what else can you do? Because you can't exactly time travel and go back and pardon them all. So this is the only kind of gesture you can do, really, is, a town to acknowledge that happened and recognize that it was a terrible thing that happened, and to honor those people the best they can by making a plaque, so then people can walk by and read it and recognize that happened there, and kind of make them think about, well, this was a thing at some point, and just to have a bit of education when people are walking around a town. I mean, in general, kind of in Scotland, like, because I'm up near there and I visit quite a few small towns, there is a few plaques and memorials. And I mean, the most famous one is in Edinburgh, where there's a small fountain that's been put up to honour the people that were killed during the witch trials. And strangely, it's a very small plaque. That feels almost a bit too. It's kind of just hidden away somewhere. So it's kind of a bit of a strange thought. Not many people are going to notice that. So I think something like this is, they said that it's going to be by the town hall. It's in a more kind of, accessible spot. But yeah, it just seems to be in recent years, people are starting to, just
Acknowledge.
make people more aware and kind of educate people. So, yeah.
Yeah, I do find it interesting that a lot of the discourse about the women, because largely it was women that were killed during the witch trials, the majority of the discussion and the majority of these events are led by sort of various members of the witchy community from various different paths that witchcraft encompasses, which is kind of a little bit, I don't know, it's always a little bit odd to me in that they were tried as witches, but we also know the majority of people that were tried as witches underneath those witchcraft acts, those witchcraft laws, weren't witches at all. They were just women
No.
who, you know, happened to stand up or say something that the husband or
Mm.
the community didn't like at that
Yeah.
time, let alone the women that were midwives and, you know, had herbal remedies for a bad tooth and all of that.
Yeah.
So I always find it a little bit weird that it's the witchcraft community that is
Yeah.
leading the fight to get those that were killed under the witchcraft laws sort of acknowledged and remembered,
Yeah.
even though those people themselves weren't witches, the majority
Yeah.
of them. And I always find that it's like the witches are actually coming in to save the reputation of the women that weren't witches at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's a weird thing for me.
But who else is going to draw attention to these crimes other than witches that we have today? Like, I can't imagine that, say, a load of men are going to recognize that this happened and
Probably not.
be all for kind of putting it forth and recognizing it and going, oh, well, this actually was the patriarchy that kind of did all this stuff. Sorry on behalf of men. So the only thing
But wouldn't it be nice if it was?
it would, yeah, it definitely would. You know, kind of
Mm,
if you had people in charge of a certain town saying, you know, our forefathers of this town, men of this town that came before us, were the ones who did these things.
mhm,
Uh, that would be great. But I think, in a way, it is good that it is genuine witches who you know, obviously it's something that as witches we've learnt about, you know, the witch trials, and
mhm,
they probably the most knowledgeable people about it, and a majority are women, so they're standing up for other women in general
mhm.
by saying this was a bad thing, we should put a plaque there. So I mean, there's all sorts of kind of issues and how it could have been done and tackled, you know, in this memorial plaque, and but
Mm.
it's been done, you know, it's been
It
made,
has,
and yeah.
which is a really really positive step. I wish that the news coverage had taken more of that sort of side of it, really, Neil,
Mm,
in talking about, you know, the modern witchcraft community is supporting and is educating the masses, to show that actually within the modern witchcraft communities, because there are many of us, that there is a lot of positivity out there, and there is a lot
mm,
of, you know, real genuine care for the community, which kind of is the exact opposite of the other news story that we've got. Because the second news story that we've got for you today is a little bit differently slanted again. So this story is from October of this year, and I've only just literally just found it, but it is from The Independent, which is quite a reputable newspaper here in the UK. It's not a tabloid or anything. So if you don't know who Kat Von D is, she was a tattoo artist who was very, very famous within the tattoo world. She was also very much into makeup, and she always had a very extravagant, very sort of gothic alternative makeup style. And then she became a makeup artist and actually had her own makeup line. KVD Makeup is still out there, although she sold it quite a number of years ago. But she's revealed that she got baptized 1 year after she renounced witchcraft. This story says the tattoo artist, 41, took to Instagram on the 3rd of October to share a video of her baptism, which was held in a church as she was surrounded by her family and friends. Her decision came over a year after she revealed that she was getting rid of her books related to witchcraft. The video began with footage of the church and Von D's peers inside the religious space before showing her getting baptized as the pastor dunked her in the baptismal pool. I love that phrase. Dunked her. Catherine von Drachenberg, upon your profession of faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and in obedience to his divine command, I baptize you, my sister, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, the pastor says in the video. The footage ended with the beauty brand creator hugging the pastor while the audience applauded for her. In the comments, many famous faces and fans went on to celebrate Von D's baptism, and there is a lot. So I did actually watch this video. Of her getting baptized, not because I'm like, oh, I'm going to go and get baptized one day, because hell no, but just because I found it really interesting. And Kat Von D is also somebody who is currently going through the process of blacking out all of her tattoos, which,
mm,
considering she's got them on her face all the way across her body, having them all blacked out is quite a major step. I would have thought that she would have got them lasered off. But anyway, in the comment section, it was flooded with very righteous sounding Christians and people welcoming her back onto that path and left, right, and center. Now, I know from my own experience, and we've talked about it with other people and friends of both of ours, and certainly very good friends of yours, who have found witchcraft from having been indoctrinated into the church. So I find it really interesting that this is somebody who's going the other way, when publicly for 30 odd years she was very, very vehemently in the witchcraft field. I find that really interesting because there is actually another influencer within the makeup world, and she was very into getting a tarot reading occasionally. She always read her stars. I think she even went to a spiritualist and things like that. And she got into a major legal battle, and it was all very, very public. And she made a video basically denouncing tarot and denouncing and saying that she didn't want to have, she was never going to read her stars. She didn't want to go into any of that field ever again, and asking that everybody respects that opinion. And I just find it really interesting that as the right wing in the States is so vehemently vociferous at the moment, that a lot of the influencers who would be around the outskirts, and I mean, Kat Von D, by all accounts, wasn't around the outskirts. She was quite heavily into witchcraft. But I find it really interesting that a lot of these people are moving away from that, as certain sectors in America seem to be coming more and more down on witchcraft and the alternative lives. And yet here in Scotland and here in the UK, we've got the exact opposite, where people are acknowledging and being a little bit more accepting maybe of witchcraft and of the historical facts. And I just find that dichotomy between those two news stories really, really interesting, and how that's a very, very different approach. What do you think?
Well, I kind of looked over this article and I thought, well, there's one quote that says, "Today I went through my entire library and threw out books that just don't align with who I am and who I want to be." And I thought, that's fair enough. I think, you can change your faith depending on what things that you're going through. Then, it's, respect to her. But then I found the next bit very interesting, where she says, "I've always found beauty in the macabre, but at this point I just had to ask myself, what is my relationship with this content? And the truth is, I just don't want to invite any of these things into our family's lives, even if it comes disguised in beautiful covers collecting dust on my shelves." Which kind of insinuates that there's something dark about it, if she's saying macabre and saying, I don't want to invite anything in. So I find that a bit strange. It's kind of, you kind of get that in Christian rhetoric, saying that people who dabble in witchcraft are letting demons in and things like that. So I do kind of question what's kind of happened in her life that has made her kind of see it in that light, or maybe things that she's experienced that have made her reevaluate the things that she's doing. So I'm on the fence between oh, well, fine, that's respect, but then also what? So
I also find it interesting that it's very similar to a lot of that rhetoric that the Scientologists espouse about you've got to go down a particular route and a particular path and beware of letting anything else in and blah blah blah. There does seem to be this shifting within celebrity culture at the moment, where it is shifting more towards the sort of organized religions, and being less and less accepting of people's personal path, whilst within that story, as you say, she talks about it being her personal path is shifting. That's fine for her, but I've also seen, and again, the point about Witchcraft News isn't that we do all the fluffy light stories, it's across the board, but I have also seen other stories where it's kind of like there's been a massive fallout because somebody has come out as being Wiccan or pagan or something, following a Norse path. And those stories have also come along with a lot of questions from people that are their employers, or and people getting kind of, it's okay, we want to have religious freedom as long as it's within these parameters. There was another story that I found that I was maybe going to talk about, but it's a much, much darker story, and the witchcraft element is actually not connected in any way, but it ties back into that idea of that satanic panic. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, go and look at Stranger Things, the last series, because there's a really, really good depiction about how that was in the mid to late 80s. And as I say, Neil and I were both around, even though we were very young. Neil was a lot younger than I was, unfortunately, but we were both around during that period of time and were aware of all of that. So yeah, do go and check that out. So that is our witchcraft news for today. If you are out there and you come across an interesting witchcraft story you'd like to hear mine or Neil's take on, you can always email that to podcast@beyondauthentic.co.uk. Are you a fan of 80s horror but want something different? Do you like modern horror but the regular magazines leave you a bit cold? Are you a fan of that schlocky horror that no one else seems to talk about? Check out Necronomicon, the UK horror zine from Etsy.com. Just search for Necroneil. Blue Chalice is a small business making crafty creations for the witchy community. From jewellery to wall hangings, witch bells to altar tiles. Why not have a look at bluechalice.etsy.com. So then, Neil, the season is upon us. The goose is getting fat. I already am. And we're going to put a penny in the old man's hat or something, because we are getting close to Yule, and we know what happens every year at Yule. We all go out into the woods. We take our log from our fire. We put it into the community fire. We watch it burn. We come home with that spark and those embers. We light our own Yule log in our hearth, and we let it burn for 21 days and nights, don't we? We all do that. No, of course not. I'm talking about the wonderful commercialist holiday that is Christmas. And Christmas is upon us now. Obviously, we're recording this in December. The Christmas stuff has been in the shops for about 2 months now.
Yeah.
They were playing Mariah Carey before Halloween, which I think should be against all laws. Those are the true evildoers out there in the world, the ones who put Mariah Carey on before Halloween, I'm telling you. But it got us thinking about what we could talk about for December, and we were going to talk about Witchy Shops, which is a lot of you know that I used to work in one. It's how me and Neil met. But Neil's just recently gone on a really, really, really wonderful trip that I am jealous as all hell about, because Neil went gallivanting in that there London and went to explore several witchy shops. The photos that you sent, which I'm going to put some of the photos on screen as Neil's talking, but some of the pictures you sent, it really did feel like something out of She Who Shall Not Be Named's movie series. It really did feel like something out of that. So where did you go? What did you get? What was it like? Tell us, because I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I kind of heard about Atlantis Books for a long time. I had various people say to me like, "Oh, there's this occult bookshop in London. It's been there for 100 years, and it's got a lot of occult history." And so I was down in London. I went, "Oh, I'll try and find it. Actually, see what it is, because I have no idea." So I went to find Atlantis Books, which is over 100 years old, and it's got fantastic occult history to it. There's Gerald Gardner used to hold coven meetings in the basement. You had Aleister Crowley, W.B. Yeats, Dion Fortune. They all used to drop by and socialize and buy books.
Wow.
And so I went there first because that was the most kind of iconic, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quite a small shop, but the selection and the vibe in there was amazing. Like they had such a good, selection of old and new books. basically. And so there was a few that, I mean, I went in there and I didn't really have a list because I kind of have ideas of what I'd like to find, like if
Mhm.
there's like
Mhm.
subjects I'm interested in. Um, but I was very surprised by what they had. There were things in there that I had been after for years and at really good prices as well. Like I was expecting London prices, you know. Um, yeah, they were really good. But that was, it's the most iconic one, and the vibe in there is really nice. Really small, independent, cozy feel to it. The woman on the counter was super nice. Like it just, it, it's really, really nice place to be. Like, and I ended up buying some stuff in there, some
Mhm.
old stuff I've been after, and some new stuff. Because that was the great thing about going to a witchcraft bookshop is being able to actually browse and look inside the
Mhm.
books, and
Yeah.
because if you kind of wanting to buy books and you buying them blind online, you don't know whether or not you're going to open it and be like, oh god, no, the tone of
No.
this, the information. So it was really good. Like, so I ended up picking up some stuff in there, and then I learnt that 10 minutes walk up the road was another place called Treadwell's,
Okay. Mhm.
which is fairly recent shop, which is, I think it opened in early 2000s, I think. And that was just a bit bigger than Atlantis. And the selection and the sections in that shop blew my mind. Like, that chaos magic section, sigil section, they had like sections for every country, all their witchcraft practices, all the kind of
Wow.
intricate other practices within that country. They had uh, feminist witchcraft, political witchcraft, queer
Oh, wow.
witchcraft. They're just witchcraft fanzines. That was crazy. It blew my mind. But they have a good selection of old and new as well. And again, really good prices, which shocked me. So, you know, that was great. So I mean, though those two were, if you get like a tube from like King's Cross, which is the main station, down to
Station. Yeah.
Holborn,
Mhm.
really
It's not.
quick.
That's not even that far on the tube, is it?
No, I mean you could walk there in like 20
Mhm.
odd minutes if you felt
Yeah.
inclined, but I'm lazy. So, short trip on the tube, Holborn, 10 minutes to Atlantis, another 10 minutes to Treadwell's, absolutely
Wow.
fantastic that they're nearby each other. Um, I didn't expect to go anywhere else after that because I just
Mhm.
thought, wow, they're fantastic. And then I got an opportunity to go to another one called Watkins, which I hadn't heard about,
Mhm.
which that place that was actually established in 1893, so it was older
Wow.
than Atlantis, and it blew my mind because it was like a Waterstones but occult books. It was wild. So I mean,
Wow.
the shop level floor was kind of, as you walked in, it was kind of lighter stuff, spiritual things, like
Mhm.
almost
The woo
borderline self.
woo.
Yeah, almost like borderline self help stuff. And that's how I
Yep.
walked in.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
I went, oh, I don't know about this place. They had a massive tarot section, absolutely
Mhm.
massive. Just wow.
See, you got to stop
So
telling me this. Stop
I
telling me this
know
because Rufus is going to London in a couple of weeks, and I'm not certain whether I'm going with him yet. If I am, then I might have to
it's the
divert.
it's the easiest one to get to as well, which is dangerous for you. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of King's Cross to Leicester Square, and it's literally less than a minute walk. It's so easy to find. So, yeah, it was just massive Waterstones. Top level was, kind of, and they had a lot of kind of witchy knickknacks and supplies and things like that. So I was kind of a bit, okay, But then I saw it at the downstairs, and that's where the heavier stuff is. Like, you kind of got your more, uh, higher magic stuff, and you've the sections down there were just absolutely fantastic. Like sections that I didn't know existed, and I didn't know that I wanted to know about those things before I went in there. You
Yep.
know, like just going up to books and going, "What is this sort of magic? I've never heard of it," and reading the back and going, "Wow," flicking through. Yeah, I'll get that. Like I've never heard of these things before, and just it just blew my mind. The sections going into a bookshop that is just all of it is magic. And that's the thing with all of these shops is they were so unapologetically occult. There wasn't anything that was, like when I first went into Watkins and I thought, oh, is this what it's about? It's just kind of safe, sanitized version of
Hmm.
magic. But every single one is just, you've got all your demonology books, you've got all, just darker subject matters, and I just didn't feel weird taking a stack of books ranging from sigil magic to death magic to I don't know, daft stuff, and putting them on the counter, and people just be like, "All right, yeah." Not any kind of like, "Ooh, what you messing with here?" Like it's the craft or something, like like there was no like, "Oh, don't want to go down that road." It was just like, "Oh yeah, yeah." It's just that's what I loved. There was
Wow.
just no judgment,
Hmm.
and it was just I just can't get over the fact that you can just there is witchcraft bookshops that are just unapologetically magic and hardcore stuff. I mean, I say hardcore, but I mean people things for people who have practiced for a long time and been
Hmm.
around the houses and tried so many different paths, and these bookshops just cater to any magic practitioner. There's something in there for absolutely everyone. But I just love the opportunity of just browsing and picking things up, and I did come out with a lot of stuff because
So
they were good prices.
how much were
Um,
you in debt at the end of this trip?
I mean, the good thing is
I'll tell you
actually,
what. Let's
no.
let's put it another way. How many books did you come home with?
Um, I'd say about. I don't want to say 10, less than,
Okay.
but I came away with a
Okay.
tarot deck as well.
Okay.
So
I'm all for that. You know that.
I know that's it. Had to get a tarot deck.
Wow.
Well, no, it was a tarot deck that I didn't even know existed. Never heard of it on the
Oh, okay.
internet. Like
Cool.
this is the thing. It's like even when googling for this specific tarot deck that I wish existed, it didn't come up. But then I walked into
Hmm.
a shop and there it was, and it was like, what?
Sometimes I do find that is the benefit of like bricks and mortar shops,
Yeah,
is that you are wandering around and you're kind of thinking, oh, I could really use a book on sigil magic. Oh, look at that. Oh, what's this?
yeah,
And then
that was it.
and that it's that and that for me is the joy. And I mean, I know that with things like Kindle and on some of the online shops, you can look at the first like 5 pages or
Yeah,
whatever it is, so you can have a quick read. um but it isn't the same. It isn't
no,
the same as being able to pick up a book and go, actually, because I've got a thing about hardback books. Generally
mm.
speaking, I don't like hardback books because I
Yeah,
like to
same.
be able to have them in bed and like be and just I like that flexibility of them. But my nibbling, my sibling's child cannot stand secondhand books at all because they
Oh,
might have been dented over or the covers might have been
mm.
or some the page
Oh
might have been
no,
turned.
yeah,
Whereas I love that. I love
yeah, same.
finding a book that's been dogged and it's got underlining in it and the spine's all bent to buggery.
mm,
I absolutely love that because for me it shows that this book was loved before I managed to find it,
mm.
and I think there's something really special about that. um uh, so yeah, so was it a good trip? Was it like, did you get all of the books that you wanted, or have you come back with a list and plans to go down again and
Oh,
purchase another 10 or 20 or however many?
they have online shops as well, so you can actually look and you can
Dangerous.
because this is the thing. There was so many that I picked up, and because I was traveling light, I didn't want to come home with too many. And there was a
Yeah,
few books that I had been looking for a while that, when I had them in my hand, were enormous. So I was like, okay, so this is obviously being reprinted recently. Okay, I'll look for this later. But there was a
yeah.
few that I'd picked up and went, oh, this sounds really interesting, but it's a bit of a heavy tome. But then I walked away and went, I have forgotten all these books. Really annoyed. But because they have online shops as well on their website, I could scroll and find them, and I'm like, oh, well, I will get them at some point.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, it's
And I bet you didn't take an empty suitcase, did you? Because that's what you need to do, is get one of those giant suitcases on wheels, the really big ones, the ones you can fit two people in if you're people smuggling. And not that I suggest that you do that, but you take one of those big bookcases, one of those big suitcases down, and you put all the books in that, and then you bring that back up on the train. And then when the wheels buckle, you get your money back from Samsonite, and you say, this book is this case is supposed to be good for so many flights. They didn't even leave the country. I am quite jealous that you managed to not only go to the two shops that you were planning, but also to go to and find this third bookshop. You'll have to send me over in fact, send me over the links, and we'll put their online shop details down in the description box, and also like whereabouts they are in London, because I know a lot
yeah,
of people that watch the podcast or listen to the podcast are not necessarily in the UK, but London seems to be the place that everybody goes to. So if you're coming to the
yeah.
UK, we'll put them down there. Um,
But
but no,
but
it
yeah, I
does.
mean
It sounds like a really cool
yeah,
trip.
yeah, they all had their different vibes. I feel like, I mean, Lorna asked me which was my favourite, and I would say Treadwell's. It was kind of
Mhm,
the medium between the two. Atlantis was quite small, had a good vibe. Watkins was massive and really impressive, but it still had a Waterstones type vibe to it. It was very,
mhm,
there wasn't much character to it, I would want to say.
mhm.
So Treadwell's was kind of a, kind of between the two, where it was quite big and it still had this great vibe to it. So, but yeah, I think all three are worth visiting for totally different reasons. It's just, yeah, I'm glad that I went. It was quite a unique thing to do around London. It
Mhm.
was a good,
Yeah.
because as we've discovered, kind of in other places that we've lived, there's not been anything that level shop wise,
No.
witchcraft shop wise. There's, whereas London can probably afford to have these massive shops and fill them with all these books.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I guess that kind of brings me in a little bit and talk about sort of where we are here in Leeds, because there is actually only there's a couple of shops I know of that do, like, there's one that I've heard about that does crystals,
mm,
because when we were at the event in Leeds, the Mind Body Spirit event, the store next to us was from Leeds, and they have a crystal shop. And I will hopefully this month, depending on how icy and cold it's getting, because it's getting a bit treacherous out, but hopefully this month I'm going to be able to get to their shop. But there is still one in Leeds city centre now. It's called Global Tribe. The last time I was there, it was just crystals and with a small selection of
mm,
like incense and a couple of bits like that. But it was mainly like 95% crystals. It is somewhere that I've said for the last God knows how long I want to go to. But every time I've got into Leeds, it's with, I went to get my new glasses. I could have gone then. Did I? No, I forgot. So it's ADHD, fibro, and appointments. It's and like time limited. You've got to get the three have all got to merge as a nexus point in
yeah.
history for us to actually for that to happen. But I am going to do that this month. But I used to work, as we've talked about previously, in a witchy shop, and there was one that was very similar to the one that I used to work in, that opened by somebody I know actually over in Wakefield. It started as a very small stall and ended up becoming like an actual physical bricks and mortar shop. And unfortunately, it closed. And one of the reasons why it closed is the same thing that you were just saying about the costs of rent and things, and having a smaller, especially when you're a niche shop, you've got to either have prices of things that are so sky high so your profit margin
Mm,
can absorb the fact that you're a niche, and you're not going to get a lot of footfall, or you've got to be somewhere like London where you've got an enormous amount of footfall and it's a bit of a quirky thing. And with the rise of Harry Potter and people going down to London and 9 3/4 on King's Cross and all of that, there's there's reasons for people to go, and then they're call into the occult bookshops while they're down there, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting how, because it used to be that in virtually every town or every big city there was a witchy shop or something that was kind of like the weird shop. So in the front they do the sort of the more entry level, you know, the incense, the scented candles, the crystals, the Clarecraft figures, or whatever sort of recent, you know, encumbrance version of that is, a little bit of slightly mystical jewelry, things like that.
Yeah.
And then the further you went in, you would find the nooks and the crannies where they had the tarot decks and the Ouija boards, the pendulums, all of that stuff. And then their book section, which again, I remember from the one I used to work in, went across the gamut from Silver Ravenwolf sort of entry level basic witchcraft books through to things that were a little bit more intense, a little bit heavier, a little bit, I mean, for the time, you know, we're talking Konstantinos books and the Witch's Bible and things like that. We're still not talking Anton LaVey even then. But it is, you know, it was slightly more into that sort of more experience level. There might have been a couple of books on chaos and ceremonial magic, but these days those shops seems to have disappeared. And because everything is available online, I do find it, again, maybe it is because I'm old and nostalgic, but I do find it really impressive that these 100-year plus bookshops are still thriving and doing incredibly well. I do find that really encouraging, to be honest. As I say, I will be going to Global Tribe fairly soon as we're filming this, to go and check them out. If you know of any really interesting shops in your area or somewhere that we need to check out, because me and Neil aren't exactly close to one another, if it's more further north, then Neil might be able to pop in. If it's more Yorkshire based and in the sort of that middle area, I might be able to pop in. So do send some details across to us at podcast@beyondauthentic.co.uk. That would be really, really useful. If I remember as I'm editing, I'll put it on screen. What's it like where you are, Neil? Because I say where you are, I keep forgetting that you're not actually in Edinburgh, but you go there quite a bit. So what's it like around that?
Yeah, I'll say I'm kind of on the outskirts. In Edinburgh, there's a lot of witchcraft shops, and I don't know if that's kind of tied to the kind of Harry Potter history or anything like that, but there is a lot of witchcraft history in Edinburgh, so I think that's what it's more about. But when Lorna, who was previously on the podcast, when she came up to visit me, she actually kind of got out, you know, her phone and went, "Oh, witchcraft shops," and kind of went, "Oh, there's one here, there's one here," and we kind of did a little tour around them all. And mainly it's kind of quite independent, small ones that tend to kind of pack in quite a lot of stuff. I mean, there's a good one called Black Moon Botanica, I think. That's quite a small shop near Greyfriars Churchyard, if you're familiar with that kirkyard. That kind of packs in quite a lot of stuff. It's mainly a lot of tarot. It's some books. That's quite a good one. I feel like there's another one that we went down. I'll have to remember the name to that one. And there's another one somewhere else as well. So there is some in a big city like Edinburgh. But I think it's like when I was growing up, because I grew up kind of near Wakefield, and there was a pagan shop in Wakefield. I can't remember the name of it. It's probably not there anymore anyway. But when I was first getting into witchcraft, I went there quite a bit to just browse the books, find out what took my interest, you know. So I'd just get books like candle magic and stuff like that. I ended up picking up the Witch's Bible because I just thought it was the thing to do, and kind of read some of it and went, "Oh, I don't know about that."
Yeah.
Oh, that's not for me. But I feel like that shop in particular had a more pagan Wiccan slant to it. I think kind of in general with any kind of witchcraft shop now, and probably back in the day, you have to have a quite an accessible selection of books.
Yeah,
Whereas in
you
the
do.
London ones, kind of they had the room and uh, the specialness, so we say, like to
Mhm.
have a great array of them. Whereas when you've got a small space, you can only kind of you can't be putting in all your ceremonial stuff in there, or your demonology, or because you might get people coming in and going, "Oh, I don't know about this place. It's got demon books or something." You've got to appeal to a
Mhm.
vast array so you can keep afloat. Because
Yeah,
yeah, but
that's
yeah,
it. And I know from when I was working in the shop in Leeds, it's like the items that you most believe in and the items that are arguably the better items are always the ones that sell the least,
mm,
because it's the things that, I know that when Wayne at one point sold a couple of his Athames through the shop, there was one or two customers that were like, oh my god, this is a handmade item by a trained journeyman blacksmith. This is an absolutely beautiful artifact. This is really cool. I really want to buy this. Whereas other people were like, well, where's the crystals and
mm,
where's the patterns, and how come there's no runes carved into it, and XYZ. And again,
yeah,
it's those things where I think for some people, going into a witchy shop and getting a book on candle magic, a packet of candles, is as far as they want to go. But for that witchcraft shop, that's kind of like your everyday bread and butter business. And
mm,
again, back in the day, people like Silver Raven Wolf, those books flew off the shelves because they were
mm,
aimed at teenage girls. And
yeah,
so you had teenage girls getting into things. It was slightly before, but around Buffy. So you had teenage girls getting into things, largely teenage girls, a couple of boys, but mainly teenage girls, getting into it and then looking for accessible books for them, and those books would just fly off. And all right, we're as staff members, you're going, this is kind of aimed at you. However, you might want to read this, and this, and they're going, oh no, I really want to read to light a silver candle or whatever it was called,
mm,
because it was aimed at that express market.
mm,
And again, that is true. Unfortunately, these days, it's very expensive to hold stock, especially
mm,
when you are limited to the amount of space in a physical shop, especially when you add on business rates, which are 50% of the building's value. So whatever the building is valued at, if a building's valued at £1 million, even though you're only renting it, your business rates every year are 500,000 a year, on
mm,
top of your rent, on top of your stock costs, on top of everything else. So there's a lot of reasons why bricks and mortar shops go under.
mm,
And then you've got the comparison with, I know from speaking to people that still have physical businesses, that people will go in there, pick something up. So they'll pick up like a tarot deck and they'll go, oh yeah, no, that's nice. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. And go and buy it on Amazon because it's cheaper.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like, there was a certain amount of that 20-25 years ago, but that's only increased as Amazon's become the giant megalith that it is
yeah.
now. But
But I think,
do you,
yeah, I think kind of like the places in London, I think, well, it's central. And, there's a lot, I mean, there was a lot of people in both, all these shops. It was like, wow, to me, to just see this crowds of people in so many different sections. And so they do a good business. So even though I expected London prices, they they weren't bad, and that's why I came
Mhm.
away with books, because I thought, when some of them I kind of went, oh, I wonder if I could get that cheaper, and then I'd look on Amazon, and actually it was more expensive on Amazon. So I was kind of like, oh shit,
Sometimes,
I could have
yeah.
supported a independent there.
Mhm.
So sometimes I think in a little independent shop, especially a witchcraft shop, I think if you've got the money, then you should support them rather than buying
Mhm.
stuff off Amazon. I mean, it's good to buy like
Especially,
secondhand stuff like on
yeah,
eBay and
yeah. Yeah,
You know.
absolutely, absolutely. But again, we'll put the links to these shops down in the comment section. Again, I'll put the links to these shops down in the description box. So if you are wanting to support independent alternative witchy shops, do please have a look down there. And again, feel free to add other shops in the comment section. Absolutely, let's flood the comment section with other
Yeah.
alternative independent run businesses.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100% recommend that. I find it interesting that both you and Holland, who's been on the podcast, they're one of the moderators on my live streams and also a friend. Both of you run Etsy shops, and okay, yours is very niche with the fanzine, and Holland's is a little bit more sort of widely alternative and sort of witchy crafty items. But how do you find that sort of online presence being? I mean, do you get a lot of business at this time of year for the zine? Is it something that happens a lot? Because again, I did get a couple of emails from Etsy about Black Friday discounts, and I was thinking, well, most of the people that I know that have small Etsy businesses aren't able to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I sell my stuff cheap anyway, so
yeah, you do.
putting a
You
Black
can't get
Friday
any
sale
cheaper.
on it. Yeah,
I
you
know,
can't get
right?
any cheaper. So yeah, I mean,
For
most.
you, Black Friday, you're like send £2 with every issue that you post out.
I know, yeah, it's like it's Black
I
Friday
wonder
every
what
day.
would it. I know, right?
Well, no, I mean, you know, it sells sporadically as it does. So
Mhm.
around Christmas time, don't really change. People aren't really filling stockings with necros, I don't think. So
That's a shame.
yeah.
If you know anybody that's into horror magazines, go and check out Necro Neil on Etsy. Get some stocking fillers. Absolutely. I would have, I would have loved that as a kid. I was really expecting you to say that, yes, you get an increase of like grandmas and aunties for people that are into horror buying it. I'm really disappointed by that. If you or anybody you know is into horror films, especially the old schlocky ones,
Come
get
on,
on Etsy.
buy them for
Yeah,
your
Necro
friends
Neil
for
on
Christmas.
Etsy.
Come on,
I
cheap.
think that's yeah, you can't get any cheaper.
No.
Literally giving it away if it went any cheaper. But I think that's really sad. And again, it's for me, it's partly when most people are thinking about online these days. Again, Amazon kind of is like the big all seeing everything and
Mm.
is just wiping out almost everything else. So much like we were saying about supporting small independent businesses in physical shops, go and check out small independent Etsy sellers like Neil and Holland as well. I don't have an Etsy shop yet, but if I do, I'll tell you all about that. But yeah, absolutely do go and check out the small independent traders, because I think
Mm.
I miss being able to go to independent shops. That's one of the reasons I
Mm.
moved to Leeds, because when I first came up here 27 years ago, there were quite a few independent retailers. And in fact, I might put a picture in here because there's actually a mural in Leeds Market dedicated to the memory of some of those independent retailers. And it's
Mm.
everything from record shops to the witchy shops to everything in between, and some of the iconic bands that came through
Cool.
or came from Leeds.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll put that in here as well. And unfortunately, I think it is just a sign of the times that those businesses have gone. So just to wrap this podcast up, Neil, because it is like the festive edition, if you like. I know, right? I got a festive. This is as festive as a jumper as I get. Black with a snowflake, but if somebody is listening to this or watching this and they've got a friend or somebody they know that is interested in witchcraft, and perhaps they don't know what to get them as a gift because maybe they don't quite know what path they follow, what would you recommend from the chaos perspective and just in general would be good witchy gifts?
I think always go with books. Just listen to what that friend is interested magic wise. It doesn't have to be anything heavy. You don't have to give them the Witch's Bible or anything like that. Just go for something, accessible. If they're into, a certain type of practice. I got a book in the bookshop. I can't remember which one it was, that I thought was absolutely perfect as a gift. It's going to be one of
Mm-hmm.
those books that I'm probably going to gift to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this one by Leah Taylor, Sigil
Mm-hmm.
Craft. and it's a very, very accessible and very fun book about sigil craft, basically how to make sigils, all the different types of ways, lots of fun ways to do it, how to different concepts, but it's laid out very fun. It's got a lot of diagrams,
Mm-hmm.
it's got like pictures of their cat, explaining how to do certain things to do sigils. It's just a nice fun book like that I just picked up because I thought this is quite cute. I quite like it. And also it's got a lot of very good ideas in it. So I think because sigils, like for witches, it's just a basic thing. I think is that
Mm-hmm.
I think it's on a level of getting someone, a candle magic book or one about crystals or something. I think it's very exciting to be able to come up with your own sigils for your own work. So I think that, but I think kind of books like that where it's
Mm-hmm.
a subject that they're kind of interested in, kind of presented in a fun way, nothing heavy. Because whenever I kind of talk about what's your starters on chaos magic book wise, and I'd say condensed chaos, like I will always say condensed chaos. But
Mm-hmm.
if someone's getting into chaos magic, they might be like, "Oh, I'm not ready for this wacky
It's a
thought."
bit heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and obviously you can find a lot of used books on eBay, or if you go into witchcraft shops, especially the ones in London, got a big selection. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'll always recommend books for witchy friends. It doesn't necessarily have to be about witchcraft. It could just be books, just about the history of witchcraft, or folklore, or it doesn't have to be, oh, well, this is their practice, I'll get them a book about this. Just get them something where you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, they're kind of this inclined, this is what they're interested in. So, but,
Yeah.
I, yeah, but I think, like you've always said, if you've got a witchy friend, they love jars. So give them a load of jars.
You stole my thunder. That's literally what I was going to suggest is an
Okay.
interesting shaped jar. But I will, to bring it back full circle from the Witchcraft news, what I will say is there are a lot of interesting books coming out now on the witchcraft trials, the Pendle witches, not just the big famous ones like Salem, but in a lot of the other areas around the UK and around Europe and the States where the witchcraft trials were taking place. There are a lot of books that go into that now. So it is a really easy gift for somebody that might be
Mm,
into witchy stuff for you to give as an interesting gift if you're not sure of their path. But absolutely, I echo what you've just said about jars. Absolutely interesting jars, old jars, anything like that. But also from my perspective, I would say for gifts, like almost anything that has some thought to it, because obviously
mm,
witchcraft is all about power and everything else. And yes, I also agree with that sigil book. That sounds like a really cool book, because sigils these days are across all paths. When I was
mm,
learning witchcraft, sigils were very much for ceremonial and sort of chaos side, and it was, you had to have your tables and all of that, your gematria, and it, it never really crossed into folk magic. Whereas that these days seems to have been embraced a lot more by modern practitioners, which is always a good thing. But it
mm,
does also mean that for most entry level beginners and even some experienced folk from particular paths back in the day, like my knowledge of sigils isn't particularly great. But it's one of those things where these days it's become such a big part of so many paths that actually I think something like that would be really useful to most
mm,
practitioners. I also don't think you can really go wrong with a tarot deck. I know I'm
mm,
biased. I've got a not as big a collection as Patricia on the channel, but I do have a collection and a decent selection of different tarot decks. But if you know somebody who's into but might not yet be into
mm,
tarot, a basic deck like a Rider Waite Smith deck, one of the Rider Waite Smith clones, something along those lines that are quite standard, and people can always then, if they're interested, go off and into the various different weird and wonderful decks. But there's also things like if you want an inclusive deck, I would always recommend Fifth Spirit Tarot. Again, a lot of these are available from the publishers, from Witchcraft Shops. And if you can't get them anywhere else, they are available on Amazon as well.
Oh, yeah, I will add that with tarot decks these days, because there is the amount that there is, and especially pop culture ones. So if you've got a friend who's kind of witchy inclined and into a certain fandom, then you could probably find a tarot deck to do with that. You know, it's like with me, like I didn't know. I mean, you know, like I've said to you, like my massive, like special interest is the game Fallout and the whole world to do with that. And I've been looking for a tarot deck, a Fallout tarot deck, and it just didn't exist. But then when I walked into Watkins, and it was just there. So, you know, it's like it's combining two things. So if you've got a friend who is into a certain fandom, so to speak, and is into tarot, then you could get them something that combines two of their interests.
You could do. I have had my fingers burnt both times I bought fandom-based decks, which was both times. Actually, I've got 3 fandom-based decks. 2 of them were a complete letdown, and that is the Hocus Pocus tarot deck and the Star Trek Next Generation tarot deck. The one that I really, really like is the Golden Girls tarot deck. It's the only one that actually I like as a deck, a usable deck, but that's my bias. So yeah, there is a little bit. There is actually a Star Trek original series tarot deck that is on my list. I might be purchasing that at some point, because that's the only one that I think that might be something I need to get. But again, fandom decks, quite often it's more about the fandom element than it is about the deck.
I know. I mean, I kind of looked, but in Watkins, they actually have like sample ones that you can look through.
Oh wow, cool!
So that's
a throwback.
So that's the bonus of going into a witch shop, is because there might be sample ones where you can actually have a thumb through and go, "Oh, it's got too many pips. Not getting this."
Yep. That's exactly my problem with them. Well, that again is a throwback to back in the day where we had an A4 binder with various like pictures in of what all the decks look like. So but anyway, hopefully if you've watched this all the way through to the end, that's given you a few ideas of what to get your witchy friends for Christmas or Yule or whatever it is that you are celebrating, if you are indeed celebrating. And do please give this video a like if you haven't done already. Hit the subscribe button, all the YouTubey things, because that really helps us out. That'll be the perfect gift for us this year, getting the channel and getting the podcast more widely spread. We've got quite a few big plans for next year, bringing back the audio only versions and things like that. But that is very much for 2024. Is there anything else you want to add, Neil?
No, I think I've rambled enough about bookshops. I think any opportunity to talk about books and bookshops, I love it.
I mean, you are the person that when we sort of not first knew each other, but early into our friendship, would spend all day going to Oxfam bookshops in a certain area of Leeds and literally spend all day in there, not when you were volunteering, but just when you were browsing. So, you know, it's no surprise that you took great delight in your book buying trip to that there London. But anyway, that is going to be all we've got for you today. And as we always say, keep practicing.
Keep experimenting.
And we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.